What is animism? What do our forefathers have to do with us? What religions do other people groups have in underdeveloped countries or the rest of the world? What religions do missionaries experience on islands and in Africa and other countries in the world? And how can we as Christians and Westerners handle it and at the same time proclaim the gospel? We'll get into all that today on this episode of CHURCHepreneurs. In studio with me is our special guest, Lothar Käser. Let's get this. Welcome to CHURCHepreneurs Podcast. My name is Richard Moore. I'm your host and informant for everything church, theology, and faith related. CHURCHepreneurs' vision is to accelerate the church in mission, vision, and effectiveness in fulfilling the Great Commission in our generation. CHURCHepreneurs hopes to embolden people to fulfill the Great Commission beyond their own borders into the rest of the world within this generation. In this podcast, I talk about everything that's moving me in relation to church and ministry, hopefully to empower you in your Bible study, ministry, church, theological understanding, and most importantly, your personal growth in Christ. What up, CHURCHepreneurs? Today, we've got a great show for you. My special guest in studio is Lothar Käser. He's married to Gisela, and they have 2 adult children. Lothar was professor at Freiburg University. He's an anthropologist, ethnologist, and a linguist. That's a lot of stuff, man. For us Americans, that's tough. You got a few languages there. We'll talk about that, I'm sure, too. He's been a missionary in the Chuuk Islands in Micronesia for 5 years. He's written several books, which we got here. He's written Animism, A Cognative Approach, and Introduction to the Basic Notions. It's a cool cover. This was the old version, but he's got a lot of other stuff here with. And Licht in der Südsee, which is also going to be coming out in English soon. I believe he's also been involved in writing a couple commemorative publications too. They call them Festschrift in German. Lothar, thank you for taking the time today to be with us. It's so great to see you again. Thanks for coming on our show.
It's an honor for me.
Oh, wow. Thank you so much. Let's just jump right into it. First, I have to explain a story. Can I do that? Is that okay?
Yes.
Yeah. We've gotten to know each other quite some time ago now. You were less gray and I was less gray in those days, I believe.
Yes.
It was 20, maybe even 20 plus years ago. We at our wedding, you took part in our wedding, and I really appreciate that. I think we've thanked you several times since, but you translated our wedding.
Right.
You translated especially all the English components into German for those folks who would speak German only there. And as I remember, I'm trying to remember back, you corrected my father one time during his sermon. It was right. You corrected him, and it was correct what you corrected him. My dad, I think, just probably used the everyday language or something, and you were correcting, and then you put it into German and made sure. I thought that was really good, and appreciate you.
Yeah, well, I didn't feel arrogant.
No.
It just happened.
No, it happened. It was absolutely, and it was right. I mean, you had to understand first to be able to translate what he had said. Yeah. And so, thank you for doing that years ago. That was a real special memory.
Yeah. Though I find I wasn't that good.
No, come on. Now, I wasn't German speaker at the time. I just actually had memorized my vowels in German. I was a pretender at the time.
Okay.
Now I could know better, but I think everybody said it was a wonderful, wonderful time. And I remember that so fondly. Yeah. Although your wedding day is a little bit nerve-wracking, right? Okay. It's a little nervous. I remember myself sitting in the garden trying to memorize my vows.
What you had to say, okay?
Man, it was so nerve-wracking. I wanted to just get it right and for it to be perfect. And I'm just so glad that you've been part of our lives since then and supported us and just always, even most recently, the missionary treffen, the missionary meetings that we have from all those folks from Micronesia back then. Those are really special times, aren't they?
Yeah, really. Yeah.
I mean, you guys have grown, some of you grown up together.
Yes.
Some of you have had these wild, great, incredible experiences on the islands together. Yeah. And also, I don't know if you can see in the background, we have Gisela, Lothar's wife with. And there you go. Give her a little, hi, Gisela. Okay. Thank you for sitting in. This is going to be a fun time. Let's just jump right in. So like I said, you've written lots of books here. We got a lot of stuff with. But let's jump to your experience in the South Pacific. Yes. Let's lay that out first. You were a missionary in Micronesia, or were in Micronesia. You can correct my missionary words there in a minute. But can you tell us about that experience and how did that shape you?
Yeah, I went to Micronesia. In 1969, I was a young man and was a young teacher. I had studied Romance languages and English, American studies. And I was asked by an indigenous church in Chuuk to come and take over the job of a principal in a junior high school, because one of the missionaries of the Liebenzell mission, who was principal at that time, had to go on furlough to America. That were the Bühlers. And so I took over and started to teach children that spoke a language with a grammar very different from my Indo-European German grammar or English grammar. And what I didn't know was that in their language, there is no difference between a verb, a noun, and an adjective. I didn't know this. I didn't know that not all languages have a present tense, a past tense, a present perfect, and so on. We, people speaking Germanic languages, have lots of tenses. We have a future, future, second future, conditional, to, all these kinds of things. And I thought, everybody thinks like that, but my students didn't understand why I wanted them to use a past tense in place of a present, because present and past is the same for them. In short, what I had to learn is that you can think the world in a very, very different way from what Europeans do. And I suddenly realized also that things belong together in a very different way in their minds, in their heads. Right. I give an example. Is that okay?
Please give. We want examples.
Okay,
all
examples.
This whole show is going to be great.
In Latin, it says exempla trahunt. Examples pull you.
Pull you. Yeah, they pull at your heart.
Words just teach. Right. That's not real life. A bottle is embedded into a semantic field, together with buckets and
ships, or you said
all kinds of, even containers of vessels, you see. Yeah. And I treated the bottle, I talked about bottles just this way. But later I had to learn.
Let me clarify. So for Westerners, the bottle, I got a bottle right here, is a container. It contains water.
It contains water.
Okay, all right.
It contains water. My students thought that the bottle belongs together with a pickup, an airplane, my water skis. I had a pair of water skis that were sensational at that time. And I had to realize that they thought bottles were means of transport and not containers.
Because you transport the water.
You can carry water.
And so you transport it in a boat.
That's right.
Transport it on water skis.
And this is the way a teacher has to talk about things that children can understand.
Right.
And I realized suddenly I have a very different way of thinking the world. And I realized that the missionaries do the same thing, but in the field of theology, in the field of missiology. And I started talking to them and said, what are we doing here? We mix up all things in the heads of the people.
So you're talking to missionaries then?
Yeah, that's right. Missionaries, and me too.
Yeah.
I said Europeans.
We're confusing people.
Yeah, we're confusing people.
Yeah.
And they must be very intelligent because of all the pieces that we just throw in front of them. They have to put together a picture of what the Bible says, or in my secular field of knowledge, what Shakespeare means, or what literature means. But they had to understand what the Holy Spirit is by a heap of bits.
Yeah, so
not fit
exactly.
Together.
They have they have little puzzles. We're throwing puzzle pieces at them.
We have puzzle pieces to them, and the
they
puzzle
don't know
does
how
not
to
make sense for them.
Put them together.
That's right. Yeah.
Oh, very interesting. So that really started to form you and think, wait,
yeah,
we
that's
need to.
Formed. I realized the world can be the concepts of the world differ very much from culture to culture. It's very deep.
And so that led you to want to study ethnology.
Yes, that's right.
And
I started out to collect materials. First, I started to collect the vocabulary for the human body, and I was so surprised that the human body makes a very, very different puzzle in their mind. I remember one example, which is a very good example. When I studied breathing, and the heart and the lungs, I had to learn that the lungs were called sponges in that language.
Is this Chuukese in the
Chuukese
language?
In Chuukese language. That's an Austronesian language spoken all over Oceania and the Pacific Ocean. They speak Austronesian languages. We had to learn that these are called sponges. And people think, because of linguistic reasons, because of their vocabulary, that the breath goes into the heart, not into the sponges, into the heart. When I realized this, I asked people, what is cough? What kind of disease is that? Or asthma? And they said, it's a heart disease. Why do you ask?
No, really?
And then I ran into the village and asked 10 people, and they asked me the same question. And when I asked my Bible translating informant, Namio, later I also did Bible translation in Chuuk, I asked him the same question. He said, no, the air does not go into the sponges, into the lungs. It goes into the heart. I told him, when you kill a pig next time, please look where the pipes go. I had to explain this.
Did you blow his world upside down?
You look where the pipes go. Yeah. And next morning he came, he had hardly slept. And he said,
couldn't believe it.
I talked to my friends and we discussed this. You say the air goes into the sponges. We started to kill a pig. They wanted to have something to eat also that night. And they said, we looked, you are right. The pipes go into the sponges and not in the heart. Can you tell me why this is different in people, in man, in human body?
So he couldn't even say.
He saw.
He wouldn't admit that it was the same in man.
That's it. And this fascinated me so much that I started out to study this. And then I became an anthropological linguist, as you would say in America. We study these things, these conceptions. That's to say, we study the relations between language and worldview.
Okay.
For those who are familiar with this, it's the Sapir-Whorf hypothesis or Sapir-Whorf theory.
Now you just went, whew. But all right, that's awesome.
Right,
I want to go look at it. I will look that up now.
Yeah. That changed my attitude toward myself very, very much. And it made my life extremely rich.
This is incredible. So you're there in Micronesia, and you decide, okay, I'm gonna invest this. Somehow we have to build bridges.
Yes.
We described in our break time just now that you sort of didn't see yourself originally as a bridge builder, but ended up being a bridge builder between understanding of man and
Yes.
ethnology and everything, and missionaries and
Yes.
people on the field
That's it.
to help them bring the gospel, really,
Yes,
to
that's right.
build those bridges. So explain that.
Okay. Finally, we decided to study together. I had missionaries, co-workers who were very willing
Yeah.
to accept my completely new ideas that I brought into this. And I wanted, and I could also attract them to the fact that they always taught the gospel in a European way, as a European concept, with European ideas. And they would have to change and start first study the indigenous culture and then structure their own knowledge as Europeans, not become complete
Different or something.
different.
Yeah.
They could just remain Americans, or had American co-workers and Germans, but they had to try to structure their knowledge in a way the islanders would do it.
Right. So you explained in our last, I have the advantage of having the last episode already recorded in
right,
German.
okay.
You explained the two levels. You explained a layer of American or Western type
Yes.
of concepts,
Yes.
life experience, etc.
That's right.
And then the animistic.
Yeah, that's true.
You know what? Before we do that, sorry, let's define animism for us. Let's do that. So you've written the books. We can hold these up. You've gotten several. You've got this one in German. Now you have animism in English here as well.
That's the English version.
Yeah. A cognitive approach and introduction
Yes.
to the basic notions of
That's
animism.
true, and it's translated professionally. It was an
Yeah.
English, the German teacher who translated this.
You also have this in French here.
Yeah,
Show this.
there's
This
also
has
in
also been
French,
translated
Animism.
in French.
That's right.
And
yeah.
that's exciting. And another one in Portuguese, but that
Well, that's not so important
oh,
for
come on, it's all
Americans.
important.
That's for South American missionaries.
This is all this is very important. I hope this is seen by lots of people in German and English in these lands that need these materials, because it's so helpful in us understanding cultures that missionaries move into. Otherwise, you'll just hit the wall. Now explain animism and then the layers.
Yeah, okay. Animism is very difficult to define. It's such a complex thing. Many things that do not fit together are comprised, or can you say comprised?
Comprised, yeah.
Comprised in animism. It's really a bad term, but we don't have a better one, so I have to use it. Yeah, we don't have a better one.
Yeah.
Animism is not per se demonic.
Okay.
People think,
or occult. Some people make that mistake, right?
That's right. That's mistake. It's not per se occult, but the borderline between occult passages and very normal passages in animism is not so clear for the people using it, and that's the problem. Animism is a worldview, basically. Mm-hmm. It says that the earth is flat, and there is like a bowl on top, turned around, and all that is under the bowl, that is called heaven or sky.
Okay.
Now we have that translation problem.
So the
in
levels
English,
of sky,
right.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
And people think they have up to 20 words for heaven or sky, because it's steps or levels
layers,
of sky.
Yeah.
There is a bird sky, and there's a cloud sky, and a star sky, and finally the creator gods high on top. By the way, we have this also in the New Testament. Paul speaks of three layers.
The third heaven,
third heaven. And that's a reminder of this animistic view, because people in Greece thought like that at that time.
Yeah, that's interesting.
So he could make himself understood. Maybe he thought like that also. I don't know.
Right.
We cannot decide. Animistic traces in Paul's thinking. I don't know whether this is right, but I can imagine that this was the case. concept of the person. That means man has a body, and the body has a seat of emotions. And this is not the heart. In most cultures, it's the liver, the stomach, or just the inside of the body, but not the brain.
I had a gut feeling.
Yes, that's right. An animistic idea from our ancestors'
Maybe.
time.
I don't
yeah.
know. Yeah.
It's not the brain. When I asked what happens in the brain, that's only when we are dizzy, but our brain does not think.
Yeah.
And it's also the place of the intelligence, and then this body is accompanied by one or more spirit beings that protect the body, that are like policemen. When a demon wants to attack the body and make him sick, then the spirit double is there to chase this demon away.
Okay, so that's where the forefathers come in.
That's it.
Sometimes the forefathers are there to protect. Maybe your grandfather. Oh, we need to also clarify that there's no grandfathers, or there's no uncles and aunts.
Yeah, we'll talk about that. I'll just explain when the spirit double, when the body dies, the spirit double does not die. It stays alive, and he becomes an ancestral spirit. And all the family is just honoring this spirit. And it's considered to be a good spirit. People think that in animism there are only demons, only evil spirits. They also know about good spirits.
Benevolent
spirits. That's right. And they don't adore evil spirits. They don't pray to them. They don't worship them. They are really afraid of them. They keep apart from them. And they just try to be together with benevolent spirits.
That's where it maybe differs from occultism directly, right? So would you say for the most part, animistic cultures don't worship demons, or they're afraid of them. They want to stay away, and they want to use their benevolent spirits to protect them.
But there are people who know how to handle evil spirits,
witch
who
doctors,
can just
or
induce these evil spirits to kill somebody. They are masters of these spirits.
Wow.
That's really something
very dangerous, but interesting.
Very dangerous. That's true. Okay, but you wanted to tell me something.
The two layers. Missionaries come from Western culture. They come from, and they have these straits and the super straight. The animistic cultures will have these levels, and then the Western cultures come in and they think, why are they?
Yeah, that's right. Okay.
Explain that a little bit.
Then we talk then also about the uncles and the aunts. That's what we'll do later. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, when people from Europe or from any Western country come to a place where there is animism, we consider the animistic culture as substrate, and we have a superstrate that comes over it.
Okay.
And then starts an interaction between both. And during this time, when the interaction is active, this system goes through a period of syncretism.
Okay.
Every culture that gets into contact with the gospel goes through a phase like that. Inevitable.
Shall we define syncretism right away, or you want to define syncretism?
Syncretism is the fact that you take one element from one religion and try to enroot it. Is that a correct term? To root it in another religion.
But it's also a mixture.
That means when you use many elements and exchange, then you make a mixture. And that's syncretism. Now you have to be a little bit careful. Protestant Christianity is also a syncretistic religion in so far that we are a mixed religion. We have elements from old Israel in our religion, but that's not what we understand by syncretism.
Right.
It's just historic,
Would you say it's mainly paganism mixed with with other religions?
That's
what we understand as syncretism.
That's what by syncretism, yeah. I'm not a theologian and not a missiologist, therefore I have some trouble to define syncretism correctly because theologians usually can argue in a very detailed way about that.
Yeah. Now, the long and short of it, I think simply defined, we can say syncretism is the mixing and matching.
That's right.
Of
right.
Religions with each other.
And thinking to get a better truth out of this. Yeah.
Right. So the two levels, they're interacting and they're creating a syncretism.
Yeah, that's right. Creating syncretism, and after a certain time, this disappears. But it takes a long time. People think a missionary goes there. In one generation, everybody becomes a good Christian. That's very wrong. It's 5 generations that it takes till this syncretism starts to vanish, and it does not vanish completely.
It's interesting,
mission fields that have been missionized for 150 years, and there's still syncretism there.
And the Micronesian islands are one of those. Yeah,
that's right.
They've been missionized. I guess we say for since Käser, right? Who you wrote this book about.
Yeah, that's right. Even earlier, there were earlier people there.
And there's still, I mean, I talk with Klaus a lot, my father-in-law a lot about some of those things that still come out, come to the surface occasionally. And you think, what? So you got this missionary. Let's give an example, practical example. Missionary goes to the field, 20 years there. And he's won the majority of the folks to the gospel. Right? They've maybe even planted a church. They're in a good way, right? And underway with the gospel, with Christianity. And then all of a sudden, 20 years later, 25 years later, some practice comes out and the missionary is
really surprised.
Völlig baff, as we say in German, totally baffled.
Yeah, that's right. Now, I have a very good example of this, but it's more, it's taken from Catholic missionary work. But things happened in the Protestant area just like that. About 1850, when France became a colonial power in Oceania, they colonized New Caledonia. Nouvelle Calédonie in French. And
do you speak French too?
Yes.
Oh my goodness. You make us Americans look silly, right?
Well, it's just the horizon of my interest that I
there
would
you go.
You cannot expect this in everybody. There is other areas where I am just a zero.
You know what you call a person with 3 languages, right? Trilingual.
Trilingual.
Bilingual is 2 languages. You know what you call someone with 1 language?
Pardon?
Someone with 1 language.
It's monolingual.
Monolingual. American. Or American.
Well, some people who are not very friendly with Americans think that Americans think you just English is understood by everybody. You just have to be loud enough. But I do not think like that.
I can make fun of ourselves. Right? I'm allowed to.
Okay.
All right.
You are allowed to. Sometimes people ask me, how many languages do you master?
There you go.
And I say, well, that's a different
story.
I say, I can teach in German, English, French, and a South Seas language. And my mother's tongue is Swabian. I can teach also. I would
Schwäbisch. You can.
That's all. But you do not master a language. You speak it well or understand well, but only your mother tongue is.
Now you come to Alemanneland. You have to master Alemannisch.
Back to our
Caledonia,
subject,
right?
New Caledonia. These priests had a theology that said, if you are not baptized the Catholic way, you have to go to hell when you die. So what did they do? They went around the island and looked for people who were very old, who could not leave their huts anymore, or were very sick.
Baptize them first, make sure they go to heaven.
Yeah, that's right. They baptized these old people, and after 5 years, everybody came to Catholic Mass, also young people. But they refused to have their children baptized. And the missionaries did not understand why this happened, why this was like that. And suddenly somebody told them that they saw that people who were old and were sick died shortly after baptism. And though people said that baptism was the origin, the cause of the death. Okay. So there were rituals to kill people, magicians used
in the animistic practice.
Animistic practice to kill people by doing a special magic, and people interpreted baptism and the ceremony as a means of killing people, a way of killing people.
They were just older. They happened to die.
That's right.
And because they were older.
What was the mistake? They did not study the substrate first and organize their baptism and explain what they did.
They just
so to
did
make it easy,
assuming that they understood the Western substrate.
Assuming that there's a self-understanding what they did. And after 20 years, that was syncretism was still there, or that fear of baptism was still there.
So are you going to do that ceremony on me that makes me die?
Ceremony is the right word. Yeah. Right. Okay.
Wow, that is quite an interesting example. So let's get into. You're an expert in animism. Wrote the book on it. Why is animism important to understand for this Western world? Here now, I'm not a missionary to a different land. I live here in the Western culture. Maybe I live in America, I live in Europe, and for the church. Why is it important for us to understand animism, to know it, to understand it, to at least have a little bit of knowledge in it?
Right. First of all, because the Bible says important things about animism. The Bible does not have a complete system of animism. We would not be able to draw a theology of animism from the Bible. But we have very important hints at the fact that Old Testament people thought animistically. We have the scene between Saul, is that the correct pronunciation? Yep. Saul, David, and the people usually use witch of Endor, but it's not a witch; it's a shaman, a female.
Oh, you mean the story exactly where Samuel is called back from the dead?
That's right. Yeah. That's it. So animism in the Bible is a very important thing.
It's
It's also considered to be dangerous in the Bible.
So let me ask you this: you would say those warnings in the Old Testament, for animistic practice, like calling back the dead, or witchcraft, or the things in that direction, right?
Yes, that's right. Using magic
as well, are condemned for the most part, as much as I know, throughout the whole Old Testament.
That's
Would you stand by that? Would you say those should be, those type of practices that the Bible condemns should stay?
For Christians, it's impossible. A Christian community, a church, cannot take these things into their theology or their teachings. It's impossible. Though there is the danger. I know that one of my students wrote a master's thesis about churches in West Africa, especially charismatic churches, and she found out that most of them take in a lot of animistic practices, healing ceremonies, magic to become rich, magic to become healthy, to get rid of diseases. And this is completely
sort of the prosperity gospel mixed with witch doctory somehow, right? The witch doctor or the leader can just make you healthy, basically.
I cannot understand why Christians could have these ideas, develop this, but it's the fact.
You and me both.
Okay.
I mean, I can't understand it either. And so, but is it easier maybe to be syncretistic in African cultures where Christianity just comes in and says, just become a Christian in this way, and you're welcome to keep all that stuff too?
That's right. That's very easy.
Is that easier?
It's much easier because it's so self-evident. Everything that is new and you like, you can take into your life. That's the easiest way to.
It's easier to do that than to work on these hard layers that are built into culture and people for hundreds and hundreds of years.
That's right. And that's also the problem. The substrate is internalized. It's in the, what you call it, the subconscious. Subconscious. As children, we grow up with this, we take it over, it goes into our subconscious. We cannot get at a distance, not reflect critically that. That's what we can do only when we're 16, 17, 18, when our brain has changed. And because of that, the substrate is very, very active.
Now, this is bringing a good point. I recently saw a program on German television here about animism. And I was preparing for our interview here today. And as well, something else prepared me for an interview that was maybe also in my substrate that I didn't realize before. Yeah. And it has to do with mascots.
Yes.
My wife had told me for years, what's all this about mascots? Mm. Every team, every high school team in America, every football team, every pro football team has a mascot. Yeah. And my wife just recently, I just thought, oh, what's that about? I always pushed it away. And she said, it's Glücksbringer. It means good luck bringer.
Yeah, that's right. Okay. If you know that it is like that, it's clear for you that you have to avoid it. If you don't know, you think it's just fun, you know?
Yeah.
Or Glücksbringer, something that attracts happiness and luck, good luck, as you would say. It's something good. But that's a problem.
Careful.
I don't think that the Bible would be in accordance with this. By the way, in anthropology or ethnology, we distinguish between a talisman and an amulet. You know that difference?
Yeah.
An amulet.
Describe the difference.
Yeah. Amulet protects you against evil, and a talisman attracts good luck.
Interesting. So that brings you to this show. In this show, this moderator was saying basically we should go back to animism, go back to the roots. The idea of the noble savage.
Yeah, that's right.
Was there in this show, and we should really take it on again and let the Western culture be infiltrated again by animism. Yeah. What do you think of such a thing?
That's impossible. There was never a noble savage. It's interesting. Okay. Europeans always thought real culture is where they are not.
Okay. In other words,
far
that's
away.
Colonialization.
Yeah, that's right.
We bring culture, enculturation.
And the others are the noble savages. And it's interesting. First, they were the noble savages. Then they were first they were the wild savages.
They were
real
wild. Yeah.
And then there were the noble savages during the Enlightenment, time of Enlightenment, times of discovery. And then they became the lazy savages because they did not work well on the plantations during colonial time.
After we enslaved them, right?
That's right. Okay, but let's go back to what's
the question getting it to should animism going back to our roots? Should we?
Man was never paradisical. It was always creatures after paradise were normal humans. We know that the American Indians were not the protectors of nature as people in Europe imagine them. When in Europe they started these long hats, I don't know, cylinder, what you call it? These
top hats. Top hats.
And they were made of beaver fur, furs of beavers. And when the American Indians realized that Europeans wanted to have beaver furs, they just shot
all beavers,
a whole region free of beavers.
So they could sell the
of nature.
coats.
When they hunted bison, or is that bison?
Bison, big, huge animals.
They wanted to feast, to celebrate something. They hunted bison, and as a specialty, they used the tongues of the bison. So a family group who wanted to give a feast, a big meal, they hunted 20 bison because they needed 20 tongues. Or
And just the tongue. Just take the tongue.
Let the other rot. There's no protection of nature. That's absolutely irrational.
Yeah.
But everybody thinks Indians were
the
noble savages.
Yeah.
They were very normal people. People
just like
friendly,
you and we.
that helped you, that could be aggressive if in
threatened.
cases. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
If threatened, very normal people, but not noble savages.
Interesting. So you think it's impossible? You know, the sort of the trend now. Let's go back to the roots. Let's go back to animism.
Yeah.
Right.
Now, there's another interesting idea.
Yeah.
You cannot go back to the roots. It's impossible.
Okay.
American Indians, also Inuit, who were called Eskimos in former times,
Alaska area,
do not know anything anymore of their culture 100 years ago or 150 years ago, because nobody took notes. They didn't write it down. What they know today, they know from white people, white American anthropologists, white German anthropologists, and they pick
they
out
recorded it. Yeah.
They pick out what fits into their present culture, because their culture has changed very much. They use modern medicine. How can you get animistic medicine into a modern medical system? That's not possible. It does not fit.
Wow. Interesting. You also mentioned, so from the Western perspective, we have animistic backgrounds, of course, in our culture. You mentioned in our last episode, and I want to bring that back, the spirit that was when someone immediately died in Schwäbische Alb. It's an area in Swabia. Tell us about that. I want our hearers to hear that. That's very interesting.
In very Christian villages,
pietistic
villages, people when somebody has died, people immediately open the window so that their soul can leave in peace, leave the room. That's an animistic idea.
That's so interesting, right?
Because our Christian idea of the soul, they don't need holes to get out of a room. Once I asked one of my informants in Chuuk, what would happen if you take a soul away from a person and put it into a what is this big drums where you have oil and gas?
Oil drums.
Mm-hmm. If you put it into and close it completely, and then my informant Ubwini said it cannot leave. It needs a whole
escape,
just like you make a hole with a pin.
Even a pinhole.
A pinhole must be there. It's so real, animistic ideas about souls. And this is still in pietism, is still today.
It's very interesting. It seems like the animism, in a lot of ways, I remember in my master's study as well, I took a class in it, that is very, very overlaid with the physical world in which we live.
Yeah, that's right.
So how would a spirit need to have a hole to go through a peephole?
Yes.
It's very combined with our everyday world.
Yeah, because the idea is not there is this world and a world beyond.
Yeah.
The world beyond is in the same place as this world, because man lives in reality, material, and at the same time he has a spirit double that lives in a kind of spirit world.
Yeah.
And even things can have a spirit double. You know that? My Chuukese informant.
Is that a doppelganger, or is that
something
sort of
like that? A cup has got a spirit double that does not feel
even
anything.
Physical things have a spirit double.
And I asked, well, I cannot see it. No, this is invisible. Spirits are invisible. And what happens? Can a spirit double and can a cup lose his spirit double? Just like a person can lose his body when he dies, then there's a spirit double is there, still there. And he says, yes, my grandfather, who is a spirit, he may want something to drink. So he goes into the kitchen in my house and takes a cup, but he takes only the spirit double of the cup, and he takes it.
Does the spirit
away.
double hold water just as well?
That's right. And then drinks and forgets to do it back, to put it back.
Oh.
So this is a cup that does not have a spirit double. What happens? And I said to him, okay, what happens? And he says, when it falls down, it breaks more easily than one who has its spirit double.
No.
Or
really?
a stone axe who's lost his spirit double gets blunt
Quickly.
more easily.
Doesn't have its protection.
It's a protection.
Yeah.
And then I understood why a spirit is a protection for the body when the person is living. It's really fantastic. And I started to understand what an offering is in animism. An offering, people put food in front of their ancestors on an altar. Yeah. And I asked, but it's for 4 hours there and nothing happens. I said, wow, nothing happens there. A lot of things happen. My grandfather comes and takes the spirit double
away and food. Enjoys that
and
food.
I ask, and what can you do with this food? Well, it will grow what you call this fungus on top. It decays more easily. Or you can eat 10 kilos of this food. You don't put on 1 gram of
Vergänglichkeit.
That's right. It does not have any nutritious.
Decaying things are protected
that's right.
by their spirit doubles.
Yeah, that's right. If it does not have a spirit double, it has no nutritious value,
Wow.
And it's even today, people, young mothers think that they have to give their babies food that is full of spirit double. Because the language is fantastic.
So this is some fantastic stuff. So this is the book, Animism. Hold up your English copy there. You can grab that in
Animism,
English as well.
French.
Yeah, French, whatever language you got. And go get that. I'll have to read it. I'm telling you, I'm reading it in German now, and it's pushing the limits of my German understanding for sure. But it's awesome. It's really awesome. I actually posted on Facebook to ask for help.
Yeah.
Okay. The help was name me some things that might fall into animism, occultism, and the like in our everyday life in the Western world.
Yeah.
First of all, Peugeot has a car now called Talisman. I don't know if you knew that.
That's right. Okay.
There's mascot.
Yes.
For me, mascotte. It comes from the French word mascotte, and it means charm, lucky charm.
Yeah. Yeah.
And knock on wood.
Yeah, that's right.
You ever had to knock on wood? Knocking on wood comes from the Celts, probably.
Yeah,
where they had knocked on the wood to either appease the ghosts inside the wood. Right. Or do you know other things about that?
Well, in most cases, you cannot give a rational explanation for things like that because we don't know what people's ideas were 2,000 or 3,000 years ago.
Like we think about Thor's Day in English, Thor's Day and Wednesday, Odin's Day.
Friday is a German goddess.
Yoga. Also has roots like that.
That's right. Yeah. That's true.
Enneagram. I don't know if you're familiar with this. This is a new thing. It's called the Enneagram. If you don't know about it, I should inform you later. Yeah. It's the sign, like exactly. Star, and it was founded. It's really popular, wildly popular with Christians now.
Really?
And it is, and it has its roots in automatic writing. You know what automatic writing is? You hear from the spirits and you write what's said.
Right,
And this is the Enneagram personality profile.
It's
very popular right now.
Really?
It's very popular under Christians. And so we need to maybe write a book together about that or something.
I cannot imagine that. It's a good thing.
It's really wild and it really has occult roots. So there's stuff in our everyday feng shui.
Yeah,
your house is feng shui. This is very important to a lot of Germans.
Yeah, Spiritism is calling dead persons to talk to people sitting around a table.
Wahrsager. What do we say in English? Truth teller. No, that's a
Wahrsager.
What is
that in English?
Man.
Soothsayer.
Soothsayer in English.
Is that
Yeah,
right? In
that's
English,
right.
yeah, okay.
Who calls the
Soothsayer,
dead.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's right, okay.
We've got all sorts of things that we don't even realize is sort of has these roots, maybe occult roots or animistic roots.
Yeah, well, you can use both terms. Animistic is a neutral term, but occult is that part in animism that is not separated by a clear borderline.
Yeah.
We don't really, people who are animists do not understand why they should not make offerings to their ancestral spirits, because they are people that were good to them while they were living.
Yeah, so sometimes the borderline can get really blurred.
That's right.
Right?
Very much, yeah.
And so let me open up my scriptures. In 1 Corinthians 8, 5 through 6, Paul talks about this. And you show your book again. This thing on the cover of your book, explain that to us. You said that last.
Yeah. This
show?
mask, so usually very big, it was that high, was used to ward. It's an ancestral spirit who was a very powerful chief in former times, people say, and it was used to ward off typhoons. They danced with it at the coastline of islands, and therefore I used it. That's Chuuk Island, Mordlach.
It's a
Islands,
Chuuk
where
thing,
your father-in-law was a missionary.
Yeah.
And I got this from the museum in Freiburg as a title.
Example.
Yeah.
Now that you said hangs in your home.
Yeah, it hangs in my home, yeah. That's right.
And so now, does it ward off typhoons in your home?
No, not at all. Not at all.
Now, this is interesting. Does it have power because the people give it power? Yeah. Or does it have, it doesn't affect you whatsoever in your home? It hangs in your home.
Yeah.
And so explain that a little bit. Does it have power because of the people? Or?
It's difficult to say something definitive about this. I think that I do not have any connection to these ideas. I never used it. For me, it's a museum, a piece of that you hang in a museum. Mm-hmm. For them, it is a meteorological object. They need it to ward off typhoons. So I think they attribute some kind of power to that.
So when a Chuukese man or woman would come into your home,
he would be surprised, probably. Yeah,
surprised.
A modern one who is really educated, an educated person, there's no problem for him. That's kind of museum thing. Yeah?
Too, yeah.
But people who are still animists would be very surprised that a Christian has something like this in his home.
Very interesting.
It's possible.
Now, this leads us to our scripture today. Yeah. Okay, so I want to read from 1 Corinthians 8, 5 through 6. The context, of course, is the making sacrifices to idols.
Yeah.
And so Paul writes in, I'll start in chapter 8, 1 Corinthians 8, verse 4. Therefore, as to the eating of foods offered to idols, we know that an idol has no real existence. It's in quotes. I wonder why that's in quotes. I didn't even do any exegesis here. I just brought it out. And that there is no God but one, also in quotes.
Right.
Maybe those are Old Testament passages. For although there may be so-called gods in heaven or on earth, as indeed there are many gods, small g.
Yeah, that's right.
And many lords, small l.
Yeah.
Yet for us there is one God, the Father, from whom are all things and for whom we exist, and one Lord Jesus Christ, through whom we are all things and through whom we exist.
Yeah.
So there is no God but one.
Yeah, that's right. And if you are with that one God, these things have no meaning for you anymore. They cannot have any power on you anymore. But as soon as you are in contact with this and you fear this and you are not free anymore, just leave your hands off it.
So that's interesting. So might you actually take that down from the wall if a older Chuukese Christian came to your home?
I would not take it from the wall, but I would try to explain to him that my attitude is very different, that there's no power that it has over me. That's the problem with the missionaries. They go into an animistic world, and everybody thinks they are attacked by thousands of demons.
All the missionaries that go there,
they're not. You know,
it doesn't happen. Right.
They're protected. There has no meaning for them.
Is there something to be had for a power encounter when a missionary comes to a field that's animistic?
Yeah.
To have that first initial power encounter, I think of Blutgeist that. Klaus, my father-in-law, made a film about this blood ghost that was in the trees. Is there something to be said to have a power encounter where the gospel can be seen as more powerful than their?
I have a problem to say something about it because I do not really know a solution or an answer.
Okay.
Klaus has it, but for me, I leave it open.
Okay.
I would not even be able what a power encounter is. I look just on these things from the scientific side, not from a spiritual side, from a religious side. So I'm sorry, but I cannot give a definite answer.
Let me go on that theme with him then.
Okay,
we interview him next. So
I do not say that these things do not exist.
Okay.
I would be very unscientific, but I'm not able to say anything about that because I cannot experiment.
Right.
I cannot prove anything.
Right.
But theologians and missiologists have different attitudes. You talk to him. Maybe he says something.
Good. This is so interesting and thrilling to just go through these things. So what do you see as very important for missionaries? You're a bridge builder between missionaries and ethnologists and the study itself. What do you see as very important for missionaries, the church, theologians to understand in this whole field, ethnology, animism, anthropology? What's very important for you for Christians and those people and those to see?
Especially for modern Christians in Europe. I use a concrete example. They take care of many people who come from Syria, from Africa, from Gambia, just refugees, and they come with their different cultures that they have in their subconscious. Europeans should not expect these people to be emotionally on the same level. They feel differently. They are shame-oriented. We are guilt-oriented. Mainly, it's no clear...
For the most part.
For the most part. They are... we are reality-oriented, we are future-oriented, time orientation, and rule orientation, and they are person-oriented, oriented for a person. So when we meet them... And
safety, or you mentioned safety, for Germans, safety is very important. We insure all of our homes.
We have insurance.
For everything.
We do not let the catastrophe...
define us.
We take care that it doesn't come, but they solve the problem when the catastrophe is there, when it really happens.
Or they say, well, it could go well.
It could go well. Yeah, we say it could go wrong.
Yeah,
it could go wrong. That's right. Okay, that's a difference, and we should be aware of this. To be self-critical, be patient. It takes a long time till we understand each other. Walls between us, cultural walls, are very high. It takes a long time. It takes a lot of effort to get over these walls. And it's not easy. Multicultural society is very, very difficult.
Multiculti is tough.
That's right. Okay. It's very tough. Yeah. It's also expensive. If you would set up schools for everybody with different school programs, it's impossible. Everybody must speak German.
Now think about we had an influx in Germany of refugees in the last years, and kids who have these other shame-oriented cultures. Right. I'll give you an example. kids I see, there was tons of kids in Kundern here, but I noticed a gentleman, and he was very berated by in our language class. We had German language. He was, I believe, from a Middle Eastern country, and the Russian background teacher that we had berated him in front of everybody. Ran him down and was very, here's how it goes, you know, just very rule oriented. This is how it has to be. Now do it, sort of.
That's right.
And he put his head down, and the talk was over. He didn't speak for the rest of the class almost.
Yeah, that's right. Well, that has an advantage in German. You can talk about corruption by just name it, you know. You separate it from the person. In Africa, you cannot separate corruption from the person. That's very different. We have to understand this and always be on the watch out. There are very, very many traps you walk into and you don't realize, and you just make people angry or push them off from you, and that's a problem. So be patient, but try to get over the walls.
Compassion could go a long way, couldn't it? Compassion.
Yeah, that's right. Compassion. That's right.
Yeah. So very good. Thanks for that. What do you think, or ways do you see that animism or things like this have crept into the church? You mentioned some last show, but what are some ways that animism in the West is creeping into the West, or creeping back in, maybe from the roots of the Western culture even? If you have any ideas?
Not very concrete ideas. I feel that the traditional churches are not so much in danger of letting these things in, but the other churches, especially charismatic churches, there is also the borderline is not so clear between what is old animistic practice and real biblical Christianity. That's a problem. They should be on the watch out.
So there's denominations and different churches that are more open to the supernatural.
That's it. Yeah.
That's probably what allows them to allow in things that might not be as biblical. Say, oh, you know what? It's all supernatural. God is a supernatural God.
That's true. Yeah.
And so they let in those things. Give us a few stories, if you can. I think you had some great stories last time. A few stories of maybe really crazy or wild animistic practices that you came across in your research over the years, or even life on the mission field. I'll remind you if you don't talk about the one. I want to hear about that one again.
Okay, I remember that Indians in South America said that they are really afraid of the forest because there are so many demons in the forest, though they live in the forest. And they say even the trees can throw diseases into their way while they walk on the path. You know, the trees that throw diseases onto your path to make you sick. But the most funny story was happened during the last World Soccer Championships. I don't know whether this is the English term for that.
The World Cup.
World Cup. World Cup. That's right. And the Nigerian team came to Germany, and they had their charlatan, as they would call them, his native healer, who could also make magic to win a soccer match. So they were
pretty good that year, actually. So it might have worked. I think, as I remember, Nigeria went very far in the.
They had taken their specialist to make the goalkeeper of the opposite team make weak, so he lets the balls
fly through.
Fly through. I don't know how they experienced or they hoped to manage it, but I don't know how effectful he worked. But
did he have the doll and poke them with?
Yes,
something like that.
Sometimes they do that like that, or they put a fetish into the ground in the goal. So the soccer field would have to be protected in Africa. They protect.
So that no one can come on the field?
Can get on the field and put a fetish someplace to make the goalkeeper weak.
Wow, that is wild. And you had mentioned one about the dust. What was that one? That's
one time Christopher Blinden mission. That's a mission to the blind. In Africa. There's much blindness in West Africa, and they asked me and Gisela to go there and study native eye doctors, native magic eye doctors. That was very interesting. I interviewed one for 1 hour. And I wanted to know, he called himself something in the eye doctor. That's to say, he took out things that got into the eyes. Yeah. And he said, when he's got I asked him what he does when he has to get into the eye with some instrument to take something out that hurts people very much. Mm-hmm. He said, no, it doesn't hurt because I give them what do you say?
Sedative, maybe?
A sedative, or
to make them sleep.
To make them sleep,
sedative.
Or not to give him, to make him numb.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Narcotics.
Narcotic. Yeah. And I wanted to know how he does, and he says, in the night about 1 o'clock in the full moon, I have to collect special plants.
Has to be a full moon.
Yeah.
A full moon.
Full moon. Yeah. Full moon. Yeah. I have to collect some plants, full moons that he can see something, that he can see his plants. Wow. And I have to burn them, and the ashes are then made into small particles. What they
smash it down.
Smash them. Yeah, that's right. And in the morning when the patient comes, I put these ashes on the forehead. And I noted this, and after 1 hour, I looked through my files, my field notes again, and saw narcotic, take the pain away, put ashes on the front. I started on the forehead. On whose forehead? On yours or on the patient's? And he said, not on the patient's, on mine. And when he puts this magic medicine on his own forehead, his own, it does not hurt. The patient does not feel any pain.
So he's like a intermediary for the.
That's right.
So like he's almost his present physical spirit guide.
So to say, you cannot explain it rationally, but that's really wild, crazy for us.
That's so wild.
I don't know where you know the word charlatan in English. In German,
charlatan. Yeah, it's a pretender.
Because I was so surprised that one patient told me in West Africa, where I had to speak French, he said, j'ai été charlaté pour la première fois quand j'avais 6 ans. I was treated magically when I was 6 years old. And he used it, treated, charlaté. And the doctor is called charlatan. Our word, charlatan, comes from these cultures.
And funny enough, in some of the really extreme charismatic, I would say some of these people are charlatans.
Really?
They're pretenders. Really? They pretend to heal people.
Yeah, that's
they
right.
don't. They don't heal anybody, or they may do some magic thing. Yeah. The most recent thing I've seen was having people in African Wohlstand, prosperity preachers, asking their congregants to bow down on the ground and eat grass.
Yeah, that's right. Or drink detergents or Clorox or something like that to get clean of things. Think of that.
These are charlatans.
Yeah,
they
charlatans.
Are so very interesting.
Magic to become rich.
Let's conclude. Do you think some of these things hold true power? Mm-hmm. And like we talked about power encounters, you had mentioned the person thinks, because they think it has power, it holds power. Tell us, do you think there's true power there? Is there demonic power in some of these things? Are there spirits, like Samuel was called back by Saul and he actually came back and condemned him?
That's right.
Right. So tell us what your understanding is of that.
Yeah. It's a difficult question and I have no satisfying answer for myself. I look at things from a scientific side and I feel safe here. I cannot give any proof. You cannot experiment. You cannot go into a lab and experiment and say, well, we did this and the effect was this, so conclusion. But I'm far from saying they don't exist,
Okay.
the real powers. It would be very unscientific to exclude this.
Okay.
Because just I don't have any proof. So there are people who tell me, who are very credible missionaries, who experienced terrible things in this context. And I cannot say that was illusion.
Yeah.
For me, it's unsolved, the question. But these people are sure that these things exist, and I accept this.
So the folks, even in those animistic cultures, are sure that they exist. They believe it, and it.
I have to take them seriously.
That as serious. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So, oh man, Lothar, very, very interesting. Thank you so much. I really, we were talking in our break time. You're the bridge between, you bring the science, bring the understanding of cultures to missionaries in Germany. That's been your life's work, as we see here. Thank you for these books. Thank you for your Festschriften, all the other things you've done to empower missionaries, to empower the church to understand men, to understand people.
Yes.
From a scientific perspective, a cultural perspective. I think your work has been some really very important work in Germany and probably in the rest of the world as well. I'm not sure how. I hope this is well read in the rest of the world.
I'd be glad.
Because it's so necessary. And you've been a bridge builder, at least, if not to allow Germans to start studying science and having a master's degree, like we talked about in the break time, and to get doctor's degrees and to be well learned. And I think that's been a huge thing that you've brought to the table, to the German culture, as I see, just studying from afar, so to speak. And I just thank you so much. Thank you, Gisela, for being with as well. It was exciting. I think this will be a really great benefit to our listeners. Any last thoughts to close up with? Can you bring it maybe to a conclusion in any way?
Yeah, I would say it's difficult to teach the gospel, to bring the gospel to people that live in an animistic context, but it's worthwhile trying anyway.
That is a good word to end on. The people we're serving are people. The people in these cultures are people made in the image of God.
That's right. Okay.
And I'm so glad you brought it to that point. It's worth trying anyways. That's the gospel. That's the last word. I'm going to stick with it. Okay. Thank you, Lothar, for giving us that last word.
She's got an interesting story. When we went to a pygmy place, to pygmies in Africa. That was the most difficult thing we ever did. Very hard to get there.
Just to get to them.
To get there.
Is this here, this picture here?
No, that is in East Africa. Do you have the new book, Introduction to Anthropology?
No, from you. No.
I don't have it with me. There's a woman, a pygmy woman, on the title page. I took this there, and I had 3 informants. We had to speak French with my interpreter, and when we studied for the image of man or picture of man, concepts of man, and when we wanted to leave, the interpreter said, the pygmies want us to pray before you leave.
This man was just.
He was. That big a man.
That's how tall they are.
I have a picture when I tall is half my size, and he started to pray, and my interpreter, in pygmy language, and my interpreter started to laugh, and laughing while praying. That was for my childhood. That was
forbidden.
Very much forbidden. My parents, and he told me I will tell you what he prayed when they are gone. And my interpreter said afterwards, François, that was his name, said that he thanked God, Komba, that he brought the anthropologist here, that he really would see the real, what the world really is. So that was ethnocentrism on the pygmy side, you know. He thought the way he thinks, that's the real world. And the anthropologist had to see this. I would have hugged him if he were there.
That's so amazing, because that's what actually what missionaries are coming with a Western perspective, and they're trying to put that on. And the anthropologists and ethnologists can come and say, let's bridge this world.
Yeah.
These people really see the world this way.
Yeah, that's right.
You can't just overlook that and say, that's stupid.
Yeah, he cannot. It's impossible.
Right? Or else you have truly rejected a culture almost.
That's right. And he can say the same thing about your culture. It's stupid.
It's totally stupid.
One think the world
Why
like
do they
that?
believe in science like that?
That's it. What is science? What is the truth? The old question of Pilate.
Of Pilate. What is
truth? What is true? What did he say?
What is truth?
What is truth?
Yeah. So that's super interesting. So that has been, I mean, you can at least hope in these books and your life work, and I hope and pray you take that as well into eternity with you, with a gladness that you're glad that you have been able to help missionaries, help people understand folk religions, not folk religion, befolkung,
people groups. Or?
Yeah, you understand tribal people groups, so that they can understand the true gospel of Jesus
that's
Christ.
Right. Yeah. Okay, that's what I wanted. Yeah. Sometimes I think of what do I do when I have to appear before the throne of God? I want to come along with this and say that's what I tried. But most important for me is the translation of the Old Testament into the Chuuk language. I would have written the same thing as Johann Sebastian Bach when The Art of the Fugue. The last choral is there is "Vor deinen Thron trete ich hier mit." So The Art of the Fugue, a compendium of his most artful compositions. Is that what he wants to?
He wants to present it before
the throne of God. I have something like that too, not that musical, but things like that.
But you have the Word of God translated into another language.
Yes, that's right.
That
to say I translated, I helped translating because my informants, native speakers, were more important than I.
And see, that's the thing. Some translators come now and they just put their own Western view on it, and they just get them to give them the words.
Yeah, that's right.
You put yourself, you contextualized yourself into another person's life and culture to understand them from their eyes, not from the outside eyes looking in.
That's what.
And that's the benefit. First of all, that men and people are seen as the people that they are.
That's right.
People loved by God and in the image of God.
Yeah.
And that's something we can absolutely take away. Yeah. Thank you, Lothar, for your life, for your work, for your input, even just then.
She would only half worth if she had not been there.
This has really been a fun, exciting discussion. Thanks for your time. God bless you, and God bless you in more ways than just this. In your Ruhestand, in your last days to be blessed by God. And we just pray that on you. And thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much.
God bless you. Thanks for listening to this episode of CHURCHepreneurs Podcast. You can find out more information at my website at richardpmoore.net. I also blog at richardpmoore.blogspot.com. You're welcome to follow me on Twitter as well. My Twitter handle is at richardpmoore23. You can also email us at churchepreneurs@gmail.com. That's church and entrepreneur jammed into one awesome jambalaya. I'd love to hear from you. If you have any input or thoughts on ideas for a podcast, any comments, questions, please reach out on one of those platforms. God bless you. Until next time, take care. All right. Alles. Das könnte schief gehen.